After the installation, you can open your Visual Studio and create a new project. You can search for the template, AspNet. You have a lot of templates with Razor Pages, AspNet Core Web API. I will teach you that later. AspNet Core Empty, which is the most commonly used because you don't have any starter files, and AspNet Core Web App with Model View Controller. Later on the course, I will teach you what is MVC, and let's start with that. Here you can select your project name. Let's say, example, the location, the solution name. Don't worry about any of that. We can select your target framework, .NET 6, 8. Now I just have .NET 9, but it's in demo. Right now it's not really released, but I don't know when you're seeing this video. Authentication type, no, let's start with that. Don't modify any of that. Let's create. I will teach you briefly the structure of an AspNet Core project. Later on the sections, I will dive in, so I will explain you everything about every folder, about every file. So don't worry, this will just be a briefly explanation. After creating your project, you'll see these three of files, but don't worry, I will explain you all of that. Let's start with the program.cs file. This file is responsible for the entry point of your AspNet Core application. It configures and runs your application. Before the app builder, you can register your services. Later on the course, I will teach you how to create your own services. And after the app, they are your middlewares. Later on the course, I will teach you how to create custom middlewares and configure like authentication middlewares, exception handlewares. Views folder. This folder has your front end. If you see one of that, it is just HTML. When you open that on the browser, it will run and you'll see that on the page like a static web page. But later on the course, I will teach you how to load it dynamically. In the shared folder, you have your layout. What is a layout? Layout, you can have multiple layouts on your application. Layout will have the logo, will have the important scripts, important CSS files, so you don't recruit yourself. Here you have your scripts, you have your links to CSS, the title, the header with your logo, with your navigation. These are the Vim ports where you can import namespaces, so you don't have to import that on your file. So you just import it here and you can use every file from your app. View start, but basically it says view start. What is the starting layout? And I'm saying that the starting layout is this layout.css HTML. Here in the models folder, you'll have your application models. If you are creating, I don't know, e-commerce, in the models folder, you'll have your shopping cart model, you'll have your client model, you'll have your product model. Launch settings.json. This is responsible for setting up your projects. In HTTPS, it will run on localhost. In HTTP, it will run on this localhost and this port. In ES, it will run on this URL. This www root folder is responsible for storing your static content like CSS files, like JS files, images, and so on. Now, it's the most important folder is the controller. Controller is responsible for connecting your database. It's responsible for basically the backend of your application. And when you create a web application, by default, it creates this home controller. This logger, don't worry about it right now. Let's focus on these three. These are called endpoints. An endpoint is called when you call the name of the controller and the name of the endpoint. If I call my domain like www.guilherme/home/index, I will render this index.cshtml. Let's see that on practice. When I call home index, I will render this page. By default, on the program.cs file, I said the default controller will be the home and action, the endpoint will be index. If I change that to home privacy, you can see the privacy page. And if I see the privacy page, it's the same content. Use this page to detail your site. Use this page to detail your site. So it basically contains your backend and what you want to display to the user and the information and everything that you have to build your application. This is just a brief about AspNet Core MVC template. Later on the course, we'll have a specific section for views, a specific section for models, a specific section for controllers, specific section of how to get the informations of your app settings and how to structure your project correctly so you don't have a big mess on your code. And I hope you are eager to show what's coming next. And see you again in the next section.